All right, everyone, welcome back to the SCB Steeler Fan Hangouts podcast. Whatever we are still, we're not sure what we're calling ourselves yet, but we are here to talk some Steelers football and have a good time and kind of get everybody recapped on the day's events, starting with free agency. As always, I am Matt. The other guy there who's bald, his name is Mark, and we are going to start the show off here tonight and see what we can dive into with the Steelers here, man.
What a period of the last 48 hours, Matt, where we have been inactive. We're supposed to make a decision on Troy Polamalu, but that hasn't happened yet. We had a linebacker that went out for free agency and apparently wanted the moon, didn't get it, so he's decided to retire at the age of 27, and we'll get into that. We lost a cornerback today to the Miami Dolphins, which was a little unexpected, so makes the secondary a little weaker, and of course Ben is still without a new deal, which everybody seems to think is going to happen. It's just a matter of when. So there's plenty of stuff out there, man.
Yeah, in typical Steelers fashion, when free agency starts, the Steelers are on the sidelines, kind of hanging out, biding our time. They're not going to jump in, and certainly they don't have the cap room to go after after any of the big names, like the other teams do. They never have, and even if they did have the cap space, they probably still wouldn't do it because that's not how they build this team.
Right.
So, of course, in typical fashion, they'll make a couple small signings, re-sign some players, cut some players, that type of thing, but nothing earth-shattering, and that's the way they prefer, and that's the way they're probably always going to do it. So to start out with, you mentioned some of the signings that the Steelers have done. Of course, they brought Spaeth back recently. He, of course, is the backup to Heath. He signed, let me think here, I'm looking, it was a 2-year contract.
Yep.
So he's your depth behind Heath Miller. Pretty uneventful, kind of blasé signing. I'm not really impressed with Spaeth. I never was, but he's a big, tall guy that if they ever actually used him in the red zone, the guy could be a beast.
I mean, the only time we've seen him catching the ball is on those really fancy late-game play-action passes. I remember him catching a couple this year, and that pretty much amounted to the bulk of his receptions. He's a great blocker, don't get me wrong. I mean, for a guy that's as big as he is, 6'7", he really does block well. He uses his arms and his leverage pretty well. And look, Todd Haley likes those kind of guys. He had Leonard Pope in Kansas City, brought him to Pittsburgh, so he likes the Spaeth types. I just fear, with Heath going into, I think, year 10, year 11, what if he goes down? Now, I know we're not really a tight end team anyway with the way we use the receivers now, but can you imagine if he goes down for any length of time and you really don't have any type of credible threat as a tight end to receive? Because Spaeth isn't going to be one. I mean, nobody's going to be game planning around what's Matt Spaeth going to do. So I still think they've got to find that guy that can get open when need be. I mean, I would hope it's Rob Blanchflower, the rookie who was on the practice squad all last year, but I mean, we have nothing to go on with him. So is that a position they're looking at, cheaply in free agency? I don't know. And of course the draft, but we'll get into the draft later.
Yeah, and Heath is obviously not a spring chicken anymore, but he is still quite the reliable target. He has been safety valve. He has been ever since they both have been on the team. So, but you're right. I think the Steelers are one major injury from Heath away from having a real problem on offense, regardless of the speed and young talent they have at wide receiver right now. So it's a concern that I would imagine they're going to address. I mean, if they go after anybody in free agency, it would be some kind of a depth move. And they're not going to spend a lot of money. So I would imagine they're going to be drafting somebody here this year or definitely next year because Heath just isn't going to last forever. And if you remember right, when Heath was drafted, we all thought the Steelers were idiots for drafting, for bringing in Heath Miller because of who they had on the team at the time. And it turns out Heath is going to go down in Steelers history as maybe definitely one of the best tight ends ever on the team.
Yeah, it's a weird situation, just simply because he did have such a great career to this point, and I don't think either of us are saying that he's done. I mean, he's relatively healthy. He had the one bad knee injury, but I mean, I think Steeler fans just always have this expectation that, because the flavor of the month is Rob Gronkowski and Jimmy Graham, that, oh, geez, that's what we're supposed to have too. And you're not going to get that with him. I think all we want with Heath is a healthy guy who can move the sticks, catching the ball, because his blocking went downhill last year. It was not as good as it has been. I'm sure that's something he'll work on to get better. But let's face it, he's an old dog. How many new tricks can he learn? And so I think it is something they're going to have to look at pretty severely here going forward.
Yeah, you're right. And I don't know that they're ready to spend a first-round draft pick on a tight end just yet, but don't be surprised if you see a mid-round pick used on one, depending on who's available. And of course, we will get into all the draft picks and strategies as it's closer. But moving on. So we covered that. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm losing my mind.
Blah, 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 blah. He's a great player. That blah 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 blah.
Isn't he great? Arthur Motes, of course, was re-signed to a 3-year deal, which I like. I like the guy. In the limited action he did have, I thought he was effective, and I think he's got. Honestly, the main reason, in my opinion, is that they brought back Motes for sure. Meaning, they locked him up for 3 years. Is they didn't want to risk losing Motes and Worlds both to free agency, which potentially could have obviously happened. Yeah. And as it turns out, which we'll talk about Worlds in a minute, Motes right now is your starting left side pass rusher for this team.
And I think he's very good at that. I don't know that he's going to get you any more than, say, 8 or 9 sacks in a full season. And the concern is the running game. Is he stout enough to be able to hold the line there, which is such an important part of being an outside backer in that system? And again, I say that system, Matt, we don't even know what we're going to see from Keith Butler just yet.
That's true.
Yeah, but, he's a good guy to have, though. He's a good teammate. He's good in the community. Very positive guy when he's on social media. So he's a good locker room guy, good guy to have. But if he's forced to be the starter, is he capable of putting up the type of numbers that we need? And I don't know that he is, which is why I've advocated all along, bring back Debo and let these guys kind of rotate there situationally a little bit, because we know Debo can handle the running game, and at times can get to the quarterback. But, 37 years old, how much has he got left?
Yeah, you're right, and that's the concern right now is, overall, the defense was bad last year. It's been bad for years. Now it's even worse.
Yep.
Because, just simply the players you lost. You just don't know what you're going to have in some of these young guys, a lot of them still unproven. I'm okay with Motes on there. Jarvis Jones, I think, is probably maybe even a bigger question mark, just because we still don't know what we have with the dude because he was hurt. And, he played sparingly in his first year and didn't really do a whole lot. So I'm not real high on our pass rush right now, but I'm okay with Motes. But clearly depth is a huge issue on the outside. Not so much on the inside, because, you have options with, Spence and Vince Williams and Lawrence Timmons and all that. So
yeah,
not so much worried about the inside, but the outside. In general, the pass rush scares me almost as much as the secondary that also took a hit today because the free agent sensation apparently and Bryce McCain garnered enough interest from the Dolphins to leave the Steelers and go down there. So I don't know if he's going to be a starter or what, but he's gone, and he was kind of a bright spot in that secondary, if you can say that, considering he was young and inexperienced. He didn't play too bad.
No, it's a relative term with him. He had his moments where he was really, really good. Let's not make any mistake here. He's not Rod Woodson. He's not Darrelle Revis. He was a nice player, did what he was asked to do. I guess I wonder why the Steelers didn't make a little more effort to keep him. He went to Minnesota. They were after him. And then, boom, he ends up in Miami and signs a deal. They don't even let him out of the offices down there until he signs a deal, basically. So, I guess maybe what the Steelers were looking at is, okay, we got McCain, we got Antoine Blake. Maybe they decided Blake was the guy they would rather have. But, as you mentioned, problem is still depth, man. There's no way in God's green earth you're bringing back Ike Taylor, so that's not an option. So really, you've got William Gay and just about nothing else. Cortez Allen, they're going to hang on to him again this year. They think they can work with him and get him back on track, but I'm at a loss, man. I mean, I thought we would be a little more active in free agency. I'm not surprised, but I thought we'd be a little more. And now with McCain gone, we're kind of forced to do some things now.
Well, you're right, and I mean the secondary was bad last year. It's been bad for years. Everybody knows that. Ike Taylor's not coming back. Now McCain's gone, so you've got some combination of Gay and Cortez Allen and Blake, and then your safeties are in question because nobody knows what's going to happen with Troy yet.
Yeah.
Rumors are that he would be they would more so cut ties with him after June 1st. That would be an option to get if they are going to get rid of him.
Right.
But I mean, the whole secondary is a question mark. The defense is a question mark. And of course, the big news that shocked the world was, of course, Jason World deciding to retire at 27 years old, take his $12 million he got last year, whatever it was, and run for the hills or whatever he's going to do. I don't know, man. Just like it shocked everybody. I woke up this morning and saw my phone. When I was laying in bed hitting the snooze button, I looked at Twitter and I saw World retired, and I went, "What the hell does that mean? Fools or something?"
It was just a bizarre thing to see this morning, and oh man, Twitter, what a place Twitter can be. I look, first and foremost, the people that are throwing stones at Worlds for this decision. I mean, come on. This guy's 27 years old. He just made $10 million last year. If he wants to go, whether he wants to leave for his faith, whether he wants to leave to be a used car salesman, who cares? I mean, I don't care. We didn't really want him back anyway, so now everybody's all up in arms. I mean, this was a guy that came in, second-round pick. We thought he was going to be something. He struggled early. He was behind Woodley. And had some injuries, and then kind of found himself, especially at the end of the 2013 season. He had that great run at the end. I think he had a sack at every game for like the last 6 or 7 games, and was getting tackles for loss, and then he got the payday as the when he got tagged, and then last year was pretty lame, and so he just never really got there. But I'm not going to sit here and cry over him deciding to retire because chances are we weren't going to have him anyway.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, honestly, if you're somebody who's going to rag on Worlds for his decision, I mean, it's his life. He can do what he wants. I mean, these contracts, a player can retire whenever they feel like. So, I mean, it's his life to do what he wants. If he wants to go do something with his faith, more power to you. I mean, is it unexpected? Yeah. I mean, it seemed kind of odd that he was really quiet, and his camp, meaning his agent and everybody, was kind of quiet at the start of free agency. A lot of us thought maybe because there was a deal in place, or he was getting ready to put deals in place, he wasn't going to say anything yet. And of course, turns out he decided to retire. But you know what? I mean, I've never been a Worlds fan. I thought he was overrated from the get-go. For every flash of brilliance he had multiple games where he either wasn't there at all because he was injured, or he was just swallowed up in the run game, or the pass rush just destroyed him. Or I'm sorry, but the blockers just destroyed him. So it was the pass rush. So his chances of coming back were probably 50-50 at best, maybe leaning less than that. But it's not like this guy was a world beater here. I mean, we're not talking, James Harrison in his heyday or Joey Porter in his heyday. This is a second rounder who everybody knows was injured. It just was inconsistent at best, but apparently from what we heard, he was a great locker room guy. He was a team player. Yeah. He was a good presence, but if your heart's not in it and you want to go do something else and, you have the ability to go do it, obviously he has the financial wherewithal to go do pretty much whatever he wants. Yep. And you're right. Honestly, I mean, the defense stunk with him here the last few years. It stinks now, so what's the great loss, really?
Well, and I don't know about you, Matt, but if I could retire at the age of 27 with, let's say even half of that, $5 million in the bank, I think it's safe to say we would do that.
Yes.
We get so caught up in with these guys in terms of what we think they're supposed to be, and I just think it's unfair. These guys that play in the NFL are totally different animals than most of the people we ever encounter. You know, they literally are playing on borrowed time. They don't have guaranteed contracts. I mean, you can sign for $50 million, walk down the street, break your leg, and the team says sorry. You get a little financial settlement, you're gone. You don't get the contract. So I don't blame these guys one bit. Yeah, you'd like to see the loyalty and the devotion of the old teams of the past, but it's just a different game now, a different life, especially with all the stuff about concussions and these season-ending and career-ending injuries. So, you know what, he's not necessarily going to be missed, but at the same time, I'm not going to take the road that some of these folks did today and calling him weak and soft and saying he couldn't do this and couldn't do that. I mean, he didn't excel as the player we thought he could. He's not the first guy, and he won't be the last guy that gets that tag.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, there was rumors that he could have gone with Dick LeBeau to Tennessee. Yep. Apparently there's rumors that he had some suitors for his work. Apparently his asking price was pretty astronomical on his end. But I think had he decided not to retire, he would have gotten work somewhere, either with the Steelers again or with somebody else. So, but hey, he's gone. It's gone. It's time to move on. The Steelers clearly have to address the pass rush, but they were going to address that anyway because they had depth issues, even if he was going to come back. So, but at this point, I think the Steelers, they may make some other minor move. Nothing's going to be a big splash. I think the real question is, who of the Steelers, either players that were released, such as Brett Kiesel recently, which we should definitely talk about him for a second. Or guys like Ike Taylor who aren't coming back, and Harrison possibly coming back. How many of these guys are going to potentially follow Dick LeBeau down to Tennessee right now?
Well, I think when you look at Tennessee as a whole, I mean, they got quarterback issues. Their offense is pretty awful. The defense is pretty awful. I mean, if you go there as an Ike Taylor, a Brett Kiesel, a James Harrison, even a Troy Polamalu, if you go there, pretty much firsthand you're probably not going there to make the playoffs. You're going there to be with Dick LeBeau, maybe be able to cash one last big check. I don't know. I guess Ike would probably be the top guy, the favorite to do that. I just don't. I think Brett, and just to speak of him for a minute, we probably went through this last year at this time when we thought he was done. But, you can't say enough about Kiesel. I mean, the guy's a 7th-round pick out of BYU. Nobody expected him to do much, let alone make the team. And he's had a wonderful career. He's fantastic in the city of Pittsburgh. He's a consummate pro, and so I know we wish him nothing but the best. And if he does choose to go back to LeBeau in Tennessee, then great. Good luck to him, and he'll always be a Steeler. And Harrison wants to play. His agent told ESPN today he's gonna play somewhere. He just doesn't know where.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, I think, as of right now, Harrison wants to play. I think he probably will. I would imagine. I don't know how much. I mean, I'm sure he would want to win another Super Bowl if he could, but I think he'd rather probably play for LeBeau more than maybe even want a chance at a championship again. That's just my opinion because he does have some rings, so it's not like he doesn't have anything.
Yeah.
But at this point, he loves LeBeau. I mean, if you remember when he was in Cincinnati, he cried whenever they brought up LeBeau because he missed playing time. But as far as Kiesel goes, I mean, the guy had a great career in Pittsburgh. As you mentioned, he was a late round pick. He ended up, finishing with 156 games, 30 sacks, a couple of interceptions, 254 tackles, 154 assists. So I mean, typical. And he was a defensive lineman, so he wasn't going to get all the big sacks and the big numbers. He was much like a player like Aaron Smith was.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more flashy than Smith, obviously, because he had the beard going on and everything. And, maybe a bit more of a pass rusher than Smith was. Smith was more of a run stopper. But in any event, you're right. Kiesel Ike would probably be a guy who would go down to LeBeau. I don't know if they would be willing to talk, Kiesel into going down there. I don't know. But Harrison, I'm just not convinced the Steelers won him back now. I mean, even with their problems on the offense, I mean, if this were LeBeau, I'd say, yeah, Harrison's coming back either now or during training camp. But with Butler, we're not really sure where his loyalties lie with these guys. Does he, you know, I don't think he's as loyal to the veterans as LeBeau was. In fact, I'm almost sure he's not.
No, I think you're right. I mean, he's not Dick LeBeau, and I don't think he's going to try to portray himself as such. And in fact, everything that I'm kind of grasping when I look at his history, you know, he was at University of Memphis, I believe it was, before he came to the Steelers, and he ran a 3.4 there. But you know, he does like some of these 4.3 looks, these hybrid looks, and so therefore you're probably looking for a little bit different player in a couple of different spots, you know. So it's a tough call. I can see James coming back, but at the same time, they seem ready to just kind of move on and get even younger on defense.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they need. Sooner or later, all the Cowher holdovers are going to be gone. You know, I mean, this defense is full of young talent all over the place. Not necessarily great talent, but young talent. You know, I mean, there's still some question marks. The defense is full of question marks, but, I mean, they're young. They're not old and slow anymore. Now it's a matter of, can they start picking up the draft pace with quality players on defense like they have on offense and try and hit some home runs with some mid to late picks coming up to really replenish this unit and get it going again, because I like having Butler here, having kind of a fresh face running the defense.
Yep.
You know, maybe having a new perspective on certain situations in regards to pass rush and bringing blitzes and whatnot. So I'm excited to see what Butler can do. I'm scared to death because right now the defense doesn't scare anybody. Just with the personnel on paper, I mean, they don't scare anybody. So there's a lot of things that can happen now in the off season. You know, and also after June 1st too. You know, there may be other cuts coming. You never know.
Well, yeah, and that's, you know, it wouldn't be the first time if teams cut guys after June 1 that we pick up some of those guys, and I was listening to Mark Madden and Dejan Kovacic today, and they were some great radio today, by the way. They're really good with each other. I mean, they don't take crap from each other, which is kind of fun to listen to them banter back and forth, and you know, and they were basically saying that you know, what do you do with Timmons? Maybe do you if you're still weak on that outside back, or do you move him back to the outside because he's going to stuff the run? I don't know what kind of pass rusher he'll be. I mean, he was never great at it when he had to fill in there in the past, but you know, then you take him away from where he's great, which is in the inside. But that's where your depth is. So, you know, they were kind of spitballing some things, and it was just interesting to listen to them and just make some conclusions from those conversations. So I honestly don't know, Matt. If you ask me today, I'd tell you corner in the first round. Tomorrow I'll tell you outside pass rusher. You know, the next day it might be an offensive tackle for all I know. I just get this feeling we're so quiet right now that something is coming. I don't know what it is, but something's going to happen.
Well, yeah, and you know, I mean, that something could be too is, you know, the contract for Big Ben. So, you know, we want to touch on that before we, you know, kind of, you know, before we end the show tonight.
Yeah.
You know, Steelers have been pretty tight-lipped about any contract negotiations. Ben's not saying much. We know they're talking. I'm still not worried one bit that it's going to get done. You know, it'll get done now or at the start of training camp or whenever it gets done. I'm not worried about it, but you know, I think that sometime within the next few months we'll hear, you know, that Ben's got another $100 million plus deal, and to me it's just inevitable when it happens. But that there's going to be a splash in free agency, not that he's a free agent, or their big move. This will be their big offseason move by far.
Are you surprised that they didn't do it before free agency, though?
Honestly, no.
Okay.
Because knowing the Steelers, they're just so damn methodical and they take their time with everything that
it's true.
I'm honestly thinking it's not going to be, you know, signed until like the start of training camp. I mean, they just, for whatever reason, they either drag their feet or they just don't really put in much. You know, they don't put a rush on these types of negotiations because I don't know, they just don't. So, I mean, they're very content with signing veterans to extensions during training camp or right before training camp. But, yeah, I'm not shocked at all. It hasn't been done yet. I would hope it would have been, but I'm not surprised it hasn't been.
I'm a little shocked it wasn't done before free agency, but then something happened the last couple of days that I think is important too. We know the contract that Joe Flacco got in Baltimore, and you almost wonder if the Steelers aren't looking at that and saying, hey, Ben and his agent, and saying, how do we structure this contract to make sure that doesn't happen? Because they've had to dump Haloti Ngata. They've had to let Pernell McPhee go, who's going to be a real stud, I think, in Chicago as an outside rusher. Some other guys they've had to let go because of that huge contract. So I guarantee you they don't want to handicap themselves like that. But at the same time, you got to pay him. He's not going to just play for peanuts. So maybe that's a big part of the reason why it's taken this long.
Well, yeah, and I mean, there's only so many ways that you can make $100 million come out nicely, and
right.
Salary cap. I mean, you can give signing bonuses until the cows come home, but the fact is, if you're going to give the guy $100 million over, say, 5 years, I mean, you're going to take a salary cap hit. You're going to have to do restructures every year because the cap hit's just going to suck, regardless. And you're right. I mean, I'm sure they don't want to have to worry about dumping the few stars they have on this team right now. At the expense of getting Ben signed to a big deal,
yeah,
and then being screwed in a couple of years. So you're right. I'm sure that's part of it. Is seeing what happened with the Ravens and Flacco and having to have that team drop some of their players right now. They may be a little bit gun shy in how they're structuring this contract, but again, I would be shocked beyond all belief if they didn't get it signed by training camp.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm holding out the faith it's going to get done. I hate to see it linger into training camp. But stranger things have happened. You know that, and I know that, and I would agree. I think it's probably sometime in July. And of course, hey, don't forget, Steelers are in the Hall of Fame game this year, so they're going to move. They're going to move up training camp. They'll actually start a week or two earlier than everybody else. Excuse me. So that pushes up the timeline in terms of when you try to get him done, and a few other moves too. That does make a bit of a difference.
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, I think right now they're kind of content. I mean, for all we know, it may be already done or almost done, and they're just waiting to announce it at some particular time they feel is right. I mean, you never know with this team. They're usually pretty tight-lipped with negotiations. They don't come out on Twitter and start talking about what they're doing with players and all that.
No.
I'd be shocked if Art Rooney even knows what Twitter is, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you're probably right. Of course, between him and Colbert the last couple of days, I want to make sure they're both awake.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Every time you hear about him, I saw a picture of him the other day, and he had this blank stare on his face. I just kind of had to laugh at him. But yeah, that's pretty much the lowdown on the Steelers. It's status quo. Couple of signings. Obviously the world's retiring is big news. Most of the veterans are now gone. There's still question marks with Polamalu yet and Ben's deal, but overall, I didn't expect the Steelers to do much more than what they did. They may make some other small signings because I think they have. What did you tell me they were? Is it $11 million under the cap or $8 million?
Well, I was wrong on that. I thought that's what it was going to be. They redid Pouncey. It became official today, and it sounds like they're in that $8 to $9 million range in terms of cap space. So, I mean, they can go get a couple of the typical Steeler mid-range guys for that kind of money.
Yeah, and I mean, they've entered the draft with less than that before and still got all their players signed. And, there'll be more wheeling and dealing and things that happen, after the draft as well, and, depending on what they do with cuts after June 1st. So there'll be more money freed up at that point. But I think other than that, I think we covered kind of the basics here with this. But we definitely want to thank everybody for watching. As you can see by this episode now, we have our audio and video issues worked out. So we're not jumping around and sounding all kind of ridiculous more than we usually do, as far as the crazy video jumping and all the bad audio. So we kind of like this format. So I think we're going to stick with it. But we want to encourage everybody to check out SteelCityBlitz.com. Of course, Mark and the writers there, Chris and Carlos, are putting out good stuff all the time. Articles pretty much every day at this point.
Yep.
The Facebook is growing crazy numbers right now in the off season. So, if you're on Facebook, just check us out, Steel City Blitz. Give us a like, comment on there. We like that kind of junk. If you're on Twitter, definitely follow everybody on there.
Yep.
All of our Twitter handles are on the website, so you can definitely check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And as always, thank you to Body Tech Gym there in North Hills, Pittsburgh, our number one sponsor of the Hangout podcast, televised, whatever the hell we're calling it, show.
We should probably figure that out for the next show, exactly what we're calling this thing.
Yeah, you're right. We probably should get some kind of title, and we could have something scrolling across the screen to remind us or something. I don't know, but yeah, hey, great show as always. Good stuff, and yeah, stay tuned. We'll just follow us on the website, and we'll keep you updated with everything.
Right on. Yep. So with that, I think we will shut down this Hangout podcast thing we got going. So we will do another show here. We try to average every couple of weeks in the off season. Depends on what kind of news is going on. So as the free agent frenzy kind of dies down and the draft picks up here, heading through March and into April, we'll definitely start all the draft talk. We have some good draft contacts and insight that we'll start to post up. So everybody keep watching the site, the YouTube channel, the Facebook, the Twitter, Instagram. What's the other thing we're on?
Google Plus.
Google Plus, obviously, yeah, because we're doing this. So thanks, everyone, for watching the SCB Steeler Fan Hangout and Podcast presented by Body Tech Gym, North Hills, Pittsburgh.